A little closer there, Kev. Want to talk to these divers, our newest tech tip, Alec, Peirce, Scuba 2000. And I think I have something of interest for you to look at today. A lot of people walk into a dive store, even experienced divers walk in and they see all the neat stuff. They see all the fancy, colorful scuba units and all the sophisticated computers, da-da-ba-do, and so on. And they think, wow, this is a great sport. Well, it is a great sport. There's no question about that. But I think you know this, but you don't think about it consciously. You didn't start that way. Somebody didn't sit down and design these devices. In fact, it started out very crudely. And I think I can demonstrate a little bit about that. You see, I've been diving, first of all, a long time, 58 years this time. I started diving in 58. 58 and 58 is 2016. But anyway, and so I have been there in the beginning, almost the beginning, and all the way through. I've seen the developments, and it's been so fantastic. Diving today is easier, is safer, a lot more fun, cheaper as well. And it's just a fantastic sport. It has been for almost 60 years for me. But I want to share some of the early. In fact, some of you asked about vintage equipment. Interestingly enough, as a matter of fact, Kevin, my producer, cameraman, and director, the direction doesn't work that well. He finds I don't take directions. So, but producer, anyway, he has suggested we start a whole new playlist on our Scuba 2000 channel about vintage equipment. I can certainly talk about vintage equipment. First of all, I have it all, and in most cases, I dove with it, so I can share that with you. Vintage equipment, vintage scuba gear, and I'll also talk about Sea Hunt. Sea Hunt. One of the most popular TV programs ever. And it is Sea Hunt that put scuba diving on the map in North America. You are all affected by Sea Hunt, whether you know it or not, because if your instructor wasn't influenced by Sea Hunt, his instructor was. I'll talk to you more about that later. Anyway, look forward to this new playlist, Vintage Gear Sea Hunt. And this is maybe just a little precursor of what I can talk about, because I want to show you some homemade scuba equipment. Homemade. Absolutely. In the very beginning, there weren't scuba stores. There were no scuba stores. When I was a young man starting scuba, I was only about 12 or 13 years old, there was one scuba store in Ontario. And that was actually a branch of a store from Buffalo. My very first scuba fins I ordered from Honest Archie at Central Skin Divers in Jamaica, New York. Jamaica, New York, and Queens, actually. And I sent from the ad in Skin Diver magazine, I sent Honest Archie $10 cash Canadian in an envelope, and I said, I want a pair of these fins from your catalog. They were $9.90, $9.90 US. And he sent me the fins, and he sent me back $1. There was no tax. Shipping was free even to Canada, okay? And the Canadian dollar was worth more than the American dollar. So I got a pair of fins and $1 back. I still have those fins. Maybe I'll show them to you sometime. So scuba diving was different back then. I'm not saying it was harder, but certainly you had to be a lot more resourceful, number one. Secondly, in the 50s and 60s, even in the 70s, do-it-yourself, DIY it was called, was a big deal. If you wanted a new kitchen table, you couldn't go to Leon's, couldn't go to the Brick, didn't exist. So many people would get plans from a magazine, not the internet, from a magazine on how to build a kitchen table. And they'd build the darn thing. Very common. Do-it-yourself was a big deal. And that even applied to sports equipment, including scuba diving. Let me show you what I mean. Here are some early magazines. Some of these magazines are still around. Popular Science is still around. Let's see, Popular Mechanics is still around. However, Science and Mechanics Illustrated are no longer around. And all these magazines were good, but Science and Mechanics was probably the very best, my favorite. Now, take a look at the front covers. What do you see? How to build a submarine. How to build a submarine. How to build a submarine. How to build a submarine, how to build a submarine, how to build a submarine. These are actual genuine articles for people like you and myself, a couple of handy guys with a garage and pretty handy with tools, how to build a submarine. Absolutely, it's absolutely true, and we did those things. Here's a magazine, Popular Mechanics, how to build a tow plane. It's not a good picture here. We actually built several of these. The club that I had at that time, the first club I had in 1969, we built several of these right from the plans here in Popular Mechanics. Here's another one. This is a pretty neat one. It's an underwater tow plane, towed behind a boat. The diver sits on it. He's got a windshield, protect him from the water. He can control it up and down, left and right. Here's another one, very neat, how to build underwater scooters. You know that underwater scooters are $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 now, quality ones. You could build one of these for about $150 using cheap Minn Kota motors, fiberglass body. We built 3 of these in my particular club. It was great. In fact, these were so popular that a man by the name of Kent Markham in Florida actually had his own book. And you could order these plans, full-scale plans, not the small plans in the magazine, but full-scale plans, and build a lot of these devices from his book. It was very popular. Let's go on. Let me show you some more. I think you'll find this interesting. Here's Popular Mechanics. This is from 1957. And then here is an article on building a camera housing. Your own camera underwater. Made of plexiglass and nuts and bolts and sealant and glue, all kinds of neat stuff, start to finish. There you go, just like this fella. You get your own camera, build a housing, and take it underwater. Here's a good one here. How to build an underwater intercom. And the picture in the front, isn't that exciting? Can you begin to understand why I, as a young boy, was really excited about scuba diving? Look at this lucky guy. And the boat, and there's an article how to build a glass bottom boat. I never did that. But the underwater intercom, I built one of these. Bits and pieces and parts, you see. And the diver, there's a wire to it. The diver wears a microphone behind his head, or an earpiece and microphones. And if you're good with electronics, I was pretty good at electronics, you could actually get look at the box here. Bits and pieces and parts, no solid state. No transistors, none of that stuff. All wires and batteries, but you could actually do that. Now here's a neat one here as well. This is a special magazine put out by Science and Mechanics, my favorite. But this magazine was a supplement, a special called Surplus Projects. And then here we have an article on how to build a scooter. How to build a scooter. This is an interesting scooter. This is built from an old radiators. Hot water tanks. Hot water tank. You get a couple of hot water tanks, and you cut them apart into two pieces, and you weld a ring. See, it shows you how to weld a ring. You put an automotive battery in there, and you had to get a motor from a 1949 Ford, a starter motor, and then you got a generator from a 1953 Chevy, and you took the... Anyway, the whole thing's explained in here, and you ended up with an underwater scooter. Fantastic, huh? And I actually built one of these. It didn't work that well. I wasn't that good. I was only about 10 years old and trying to weld and so on. But it was just great. I want to show you something else in here. How about this one, guys? Compressors? I don't like that. You want to build your own compressor. Look, high pressure air for scuba divers. There's a guy there filling his scuba tank with his own compressor. Well, you see, there was another thing in the 50s and 60s that was fantastic. They were called war surplus stores. So you could go to your local war surplus store and you could buy stuff left over, obviously, from the war. It was cheap. Good quality stuff. And then these articles, some guy sat down and he figured out, and very handy, he figured out how to take a war surplus compressor, as an example, and make it into a compressor that would pump air for your scuba tank. You see the compressor right there? I don't know if you can see that very well there, Kevin. See the compressor? See, there's one there. Yeah, pretty neat. So if you had one of these war surplus compressors, you could build your own scuba compressor. Look over here, Kev. What's that? There's one of those compressors. As a matter of fact, I have 4 or 5 of these. This is the actual Cornelius from the United States Air Force compressor that was used on the airplanes. And if you had one of these and a copy of these plans, you could build your own compressor for your scuba outfit. It was an exciting time and a whole lot of fun. So you begin to understand how it could be exciting and what we could do. Now this one is kind of neat. This is good. Here's an idea for your club. You want to have a good idea for your next scuba club meeting? Hey guys, let's build our own underwater habitat. That's right. Get a couple of guys together, a little bit of money, a couple of radiators, hot water tanks, cut them apart, take the plans, and you build your own underwater habitat. And you can build it and sink it and climb up inside and, I don't know what you do in there, play games, eat cheese and crackers, look around. And then when you're tired, you get out and you go back to the surface. Underwater habitat. How about that? You'd be the only club in Ontario with its own underwater habitat. Now here's a funny one. Look at this. Popular Science. You see this guy down there with a special mask and a hose going up to the surface? You see this poor guy up here with that pump? He's pumping. He's like, what is this? Well, I'll tell you what this is. This is actually building your own scuba system. Scuba hadn't been invented, but you can build a diving outfit, as they call it. So here's a diver with a mask, been modified with a garden hose. Garden hose goes to the surface, and here's the pump on the surface. Yeah, the guy on the surface actually had the pump back and forth. You had to hope he was good and strong and didn't get tired and stop for a sandwich or go for lunch while you were underwater. And there's all the bits and pieces and parts. You could build your own mask and the pump. Look at the pump. Pretty slick, huh? Let me go one more page. This is unbelievable, but you get an idea of what I mean by do it yourself. Build your own snorkel. Oh, that's got to be hard to do. Well, not really, but build your own. Who would build your own snorkel? How to make your own fins. How to make your own mask and blocks. This is great. So you could get one of these magazines for 25 cents, you see, and a little bit of ingenuity, very little money, you can actually build your own scuba gear. Would you do that today? Well, no, it'd be a problem. First of all, you couldn't get the parts. Skills today among young people are not what they used to be. They're great on video games, and that's good for their future in business, but to do this kind of stuff, and also a lot of these articles don't appear anymore. I'm not exactly sure why. I have some ideas, maybe liability. Anyway, it's pretty exciting back then. I'm going to show you one more. Science, popular science, 1953, July 1953. Look at this lucky guy. He's a scuba diver. Well, he's a lung diver because scuba had not been invented. They called them lung divers. See that? Double tanks on his back, hoses coming around, a mask, good-looking girl. Oh, snorkel, maybe homemade. Oh, great, huh? Where did you get that lung? Build your own diving lung. Ta-da! There's the article. So you go to your local surplus store, you get a couple of U.S. Air Force tanks, and you get what was called an oxygen diluter valve. This is a valve that was used in the aircraft jets in the Second World War that controlled the amount of oxygen that came from the oxygen tank for the pilot. So if you went very high, you could get oxygen. Oxygen diluter valve. You see, you buy one of those, it costs about $7. And then you get some hoses, usually hoses from an old rebreather, an old gas mask or so on. And then using these plans, you get a flat plate, and you put it all together, and it shows you how to take the oxygen diluter valve apart, and you have to make a plate for the back of it. Okay, I have some of these diluter valves. Well, I have something even better than that. You know what I'm going to show you right now? I'm going to show you some of these lungs. Let's do that. Kevin, I want you to go down in front and pan across some, start with Lloyd maybe, and there's an old picture of me down there as well, Kevin, and then pan across the front there and look at some of that homemade scuba equipment, homemade scuba outfits. And these were actually used right from that 1953 article. Here's what they here's how they work. Now, if you look carefully at this particular one, the oldest one, there wasn't much work put on this one. You can, different guys had different skills, but this is almost exactly what an oxygen diluter valve looked like when you bought it at the war surplus store. Still has a red knob on it, which you didn't need, and so on. He did not modify this very much. He got the two tanks, they're smallish tanks, and he put a bar through here and joined them, and he's got a valve in here, and here's the oxygen diluter valve, and you had to take the back off and make a new plate for the back. He did a good job. He got some straps, and he made up a harness of some sort, and put the hoses on. I've taken the hoses off so they don't get stuck onto the fittings. I want to keep this is old, okay? This is 60, 70 years old, and I'm trying to keep it in as good a shape as I possibly can. But look at that, homemade. Fill it with air, if you can get a dive store to fill it. You may have to build your own compressor, but anyway, fill it with air, put on a mask, jump in the water and go scuba diving. How about that? Back in those days, this would cost you about $60 to build. Think about it. Scuba tank regulator. Now, here's a little more sophisticated model. Maybe this guy had a little better skill, or he had access to a little better surplus. He has bigger tanks. These were the common tanks used by the United States Air Force. These tanks were low pressure, 1500 psi, and they were wrapped with wire, very strong wire. And that wire made the tanks very strong. For scuba diving, we took that wire off. We didn't need that. Again, two valves, made of brass, by the way, low pressure, a joiner, and then what you got on top here? There's your oxygen diluter valve. Exactly the same. See the cap? This has got the cap still on. Comes off, you see, and it ends up looking, this is the same valve. And this fellow, he was good with the tanks and everything, but he wasn't very good with the jigsaw because the plate that he had to make at the back, look at it, it's kind of rough. Doesn't really, it's not nice and round and clean, painted black, stuck back on there, and there you go, another homemade scuba unit. Now this one over here, this fellow was even better. He had a nice unit, and what he did, he got a nice chrome cover for the front of the diluter. I can turn it around here and show you. Nice chrome cover, look at that, that's nice. Homemade scuba unit from the July 1953 Popular Science. It even has a J valve on it, safety reserve. Didn't work very well, but it worked. Now these were so popular, so many people made their own scuba units in those days that finally somebody said, hey, I can make a whole bunch of those and sell them and make money. Right over here, there was a chap, good friend of mine, by the name of Mr. Singer. He and his wife had a dive store in Buffalo, and they moved. They opened a dive store in Toronto. And the name of the company, some of the older divers in Ontario or Northern New York may remember the name Supreme Divers. You see it there? Supreme Divers. Recognize it? Same tanks, same valves, bit of silver spray, same J valve. In these particular cases, he had a nice chrome cap made, and the plate on the back is nice and smooth, still screwed on the same way. Same diluter valve, look at it. A couple of gas hoses, and they actually had these available for people to buy. $110 Canadian, which was like about $140 US at the time, and you had a scuba unit ready to go. So I know when we were talking about tanks a short while ago, and I mentioned just an offhand remark about a homemade scuba unit, and I got several comments. Thanks, by the way, for all your comments and questions. And somebody got to me and said, listen, I'd love to see those homemade scuba units. Well, there you go. There's a history of them, and there's what they look like and how they work. Hope you've enjoyed that. Keep watching. Keep sending in your comments. I really enjoy that. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of history. And watch in a little while. I'm not too sure how long it will be, but fairly short. We're going to have a new playlist on the Scuba 2000 channel for you to enjoy, which will concentrate on vintage equipment. So if you're into that old stuff, I'm your guy. Talk to you soon. Alec Peirce, Scuba 2000 Tech Tips.